Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to this week's edition of Artist Alchemy. This is YubaSutterArts&Culture's bi-weekly show where we bring together artists and other culture leaders in the community to talk about that kind of magic that happens when artists take materials and turn them into something else. So our special guest today is ceramist Chris Thompson. Chris, welcome. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And good afternoon to you, too.
Yeah, appreciate you being on. You'll get to know Chris over the next hour. We've worked with Chris on a bunch of projects over the last 5 or 6 years, maybe even a little longer, and gotten to know him pretty well. And he's just a tremendous artist and also an artist who is always more than willing to kind of give back and share his process and as an arts educator as well. So Chris, we've been in touch this past year and seen you a time or two, but, how's it going? How was your life in the time of COVID? How has it changed? How are you adapting?
COVID's caused a lot more time in the studio for me. A lot more time in the studio. I've got my studio dialed into the kind of way I like it now. And, just not as many people around. A lot more art being made. Yes, it's been testing. It's been a little bit of a test on me as an artist, as a person. But yeah, golly, we do what we can do, right?
Yeah, it's certainly cut back on the classes we're able to offer.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of on a roll there with our Ceramics for Veterans program. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But glad you're keeping on doing what you do. But that social part, let alone gallery shows and that kind of thing, as you know,
right.
We shut last year. So it's
certainly put a stop to a pretty busy schedule I had for galleries last year.
Yeah.
Kind of shut it all down.
We'll be back later this year. As long as you got plenty of inventory saved up, we'll be ready to get back open. Speaking of gallery shows, I think I first met you when I was getting involved at YubaSutterArts. And were you in the middle of or just getting started with your 1,000 bowl project? Talk about that and that show.
That was actually closer to the end of the 1,000 bowls.
Okay.
Basically what the idea was going to be, it was going to be part of my master's degree pursuit.
Is that 1,000 bowls there?
It's actually a few more than 1,000, closer to around 1,200.
Wow.
And that's bigger than a 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Wow.
And it's about about 5 foot tall.
Gee.
So it's about 4.5 tons of clay went into making that.
Wait, what's that number again? How much clay?
4.5 tons.
Tons. Wow.
About 9,000 pounds of clay. Of course, after it's all fired and sitting in that kind of stack, it's not. It doesn't weigh that much because it's been fired.
That's a lot.
All the moisture's been taken out, and all the volume's been trimmed down to just the essential to be a feast bowl.
That's a lot of soup and stew right there.
And to think that when I throw, I use 2 fingers. The 2 fingers can move that much weight. That's pretty boggling the mind, if you ask me.
Well, it's fun to look at it that way. That's really kind of a different perspective. But what about? Tell us about the. I remember there was a community involvement piece where you threw all the bowls. I
threw all the bowls. I bisque fired them all. I glazed the exteriors of them, and then I put on these glaze workshops that were involved with community everywhere from Yuba City all the way down to San Joaquin, Stockton area, and all points in between.
And
The
community
idea,
members can sign up to what? Do the final glazing inside the bowl on the interior surface?
right, right. And the reason I kind of confined it to the interior is because, golly, I didn't want to ruin a bunch of kiln furniture and stuff. And if I could keep the drippy running kind of glazes to the inside of a bowl, they'd be contained. But the idea was to make at least 1,000 feast bowls, and then to show them, sell them, and donate the profits to feed the hungry.
Wow.
I know that myself, I couldn't do that specific thing, so I picked out various charities that would be the recipients of the charity. Everything from Loaves and Britches,
Right.
to Loaves and Fishes, to Meals on Wheels, to Food Link, and a couple of others in there, I'm sure.
Boy. And you've continued to do that, I know, in the community on a smaller scale, and you've donated bowls to some of our local food support programs. So,
But yeah, bridges to housing. I've done a couple of super suppers. Probably all in all, bowl fundraisers, I've done probably close to 9 or 10.
Jay, amazing
And
project.
they're generally a large number of bowls, 100 or more. I'm just getting ready to kick off another one that's being done for this organization called NSECA. It's a national education of ceramics in colleges. We're going to have NSECA, that particular organization, come to our area and in 2022, and it's going to be all about clay.
I've heard you talk about it along with Glenn Husted from the college, and also our friend Steve Dilley from Vet Art have
Absolutely
talked about it. So this in addition to the good deed aspect of it, I know you raised a bunch of money for those organizations and people that signed up to be part of it. I think they got a bowl of soup in a lot of cases and a beautiful bowl to take home. But this was part of your MFA program at Sac State?
It was supposed to be. I got through the first semester of it with all the planning phase and trying to get galleries on board. And then I was informed that I couldn't do it. And it was talk about being crestfallen.
Yeah.
I went into a 2-3 day kind of funk.
Oh.
And I kind of pulled within, did a lot of meditation, did a lot of thinking about it. And then I thought, gosh, if I don't do this, then I'll be looked at in my professional community as a blowhard. And I didn't want that at all.
No, of course.
So I decided I was going to go ahead and do it, regardless of whether or not they said I could or not.
Okay.
And that I would just go ahead and come up with a whole nother line of work that would be graded for my master's degree.
Okay.
So
is that what you wound up doing? Another total?
I ended up making stuff. I brought the two mediums together, copper and ceramic.
Oh, okay. Even back then. We're going to look at some of that work a little later.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that line of work, that work became what they graded me on, and ultimately what I was awarded the master's degree for.
Okay.
And the copper and the clay take an inordinate amount of time, a bit of time to put together. Instead of, I can throw a bowl or a vase or something within an hour or less.
Yeah.
Putting the copper onto the piece, I grow it onto it with electricity and amperage, and
you showed me that process at your studio. It's
and acids and a bath and wires, and it takes a matter of weeks and months to put the copper on.
Right.
So while I was waiting for the copper to go on, I went ahead and I did. I continued making the bowls.
Okay. Good for you. So mission accomplished. You had your
It
passion
was it
project.
was a white elephant in the room. Whenever the professors would come and visit my studio, they saw the bowls everywhere, but I didn't utter a word about them.
Oh, well, good for you for pressing on with both your passion project and your other project for your masters. So
that big stack of bowls that you saw was the actual stack that was in my final masters show. Those bowls were in the center of this very large room, and all my copper pieces were on the walls surrounding it.
Oh, what a presentation! So were you doing that to poke at them a little bit, or?
No, not well. Yeah, maybe.
Being a little provocative.
I kind of wanted to do a little bit of closure on it with them and let them know that, hey, this is who I am and this is what it's all about for me.
Yeah.
The wonderful thing about the 1,000 Bowls is I view it kind of as political art, but with a partial solution.
Yeah, right.
It's not just pointing out something that's wrong and say, hey, this needs to have something done about it. It's saying, and here's what I can do about it. And it basically challenges others to do something about the same issue. And this was all about 1 in 5 people in and around our area when I started this were 1 in 4 were suffering from food issues. By the time the thing was done, I'd like to think that this had a little bit something to do with the lower numbers, but it became 1 in 5, and in some places 1 in 6.
Oh.
So it addressed an issue that was actual, and I'd like to think that it had a little bit of an outcome on it.
Each of us in our own way making a difference. So, and to that point, I mean, this of course is a number of years ago before the pandemic. And if anything, food insecurity probably has taken a turn the other direction with folks
absolutely
unemployed or underemployed, and homelessness on the rise, and housing insecurity and all those other factors related to hunger in our country, and particularly in our region.
Yes. That's why I'm kind of excited about doing another bowl project in conjunction with NSECA and getting a whole bunch of people involved.
Very, very exciting. Lots to talk about, Chris. You didn't, I don't think, started life as a ceramist. And let me mention, this is one of the new words. I love learning new words. I didn't know the term ceramist until this last couple of months. I think Abby or you or someone schooled me on this. I would have said ceramicist, or ceramic artist is probably acceptable, but ceramist is the term for what you are, right? As in kind of almost what's the deal? Can you expand on that at all? It's
precisely ceramist. I was in the process of writing my thesis, my master's thesis. My advisor, he scratched out one of my words, ceramicist.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Put ceramist there, and I said, I think you misspelled this.
Oh.
And then he schooled me.
Okay.
He said, excuse me, look it up.
Oh yeah, I have.
And I went and I looked it up, and I ate a lot of tasty crow.
You said ceramist. That's I are one. So yeah.
Yeah. I be one. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's good. I just love that term. So you didn't start life as a ceramist. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the Midwest, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana. My father was an engineer for Boeing Aerospace, working specifically on the Minuteman missile program.
Oh, okay.
So they sent him around wherever we had nuclear weapons.
Wow.
And yeah,
So
I started life that way when I was a kid. My mom was always into artwork. She was a performing artist growing up. She was a ballerina.
wow.
And then later in life, she wanted to do representational kind of art, and she chose ceramics.
Oh my gosh.
And
Okay.
porcelain more specifically. And I was kind of noodling around her studio one day. She said, "You want to play with some clay?" I said, "Sure." So she tossed me some porcelain, and for the longest while, that's what I thought clay was.
Wait, tell us the difference. You've explained it to me, and I can't for the life of me remember. Porcelain versus whatever, ceramic.
Porcelain has absolutely no grog in it, and stoneware has stuff called grog. What grog is, it's pre-fired clay that's been ground up and turned into a very fine particulate and added back into the raw clay to give the clay a certain amount of internal structure and body.
And so what you're doing is stoneware, I mean, or that's
I do both. I do both porcelain and stoneware. To me, they're just different clay bodies. Some people find porcelain tougher to work with.
I was going to say, is there difficulty with it? Yeah.
It's got its own personality.
Yeah.
Most definitely. It wants to be handled and touched in a certain way, whereas stoneware, it says, "Hey, just make something out of me."
Interesting. So, and do you work it the same way? Hand build? You can work on the wheel with the porcelain?
Hand build or wheel thrown, yes. Sculpture or vessel.
And is it multiple stages of firing, bisque, and then glaze, and then final, or different steps there?
Precise. It's the same as stoneware in that there's two different firings. There's a bisque firing and there's a glaze firing.
Okay.
And primarily, the only reason we do bisque firing is so that it's a little more durable and we can glaze it.
Okay. All right. Fascinating.
Yeah.
I appreciate you reminding me of the differences. I've been going to the Chris Thompson School of Ceramics for several years, and one of these days I'll actually get my hands wet with some clay. So
we get some clay under those fingernails.
I know. I'd love to do it. So you're traveling around the country with your family. At what point did you join the Air Force?
19 years old, my father had just passed, and I was kind of a lost soul, and I was looking for direction, and the Air Force seemed to be a good choice.
Yeah, good.
I signed up for the military and took my oath in Missouri, and I found myself in sunny California.
Oh, were you here the whole time, or did they move you around some?
I spent about 5.5 years at Mather Air Force Base, and then I got what they call a PCS, permanent change of station.
Yeah.
They sent me to McClellan.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you were here the whole time?
Pretty much.
Really? Okay, that's how you wound up in the Sacramento area. Okay.
Joined the Air Force, California, specifically Sacramento and surrounding areas.
Okay, that's not a bad deal.
Yeah.
And you stayed. Good for you. We're glad.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful part of the country.
And you were in for about 11 years?
Between 10 and 11, yes.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah.
And what was your job? I assume it wasn't ceramist.
No. When I was at Mather, I was a heating system specialist.
Oh.
I worked with gas and oil fired boilers and high pressure, low pressure steam.
Okay.
So it had something to do with fire.
Yeah, right. Sure.
And then when I went to McClellan, I became an engineering assistant, and I ultimately got my engineering degree. So yeah, and then they said, "Gosh, your back is not the best, Chris. We need soldiers with good, strong backs.
Oh,
Here's an option. Do you want to go ahead and medically retire? So I said, sure.
oh, okay.
And then
That was
the
that.
rest is I basically started my own business and ultimately decided to chase my lifelong passion, was that of an artist.
Had that, I was going to say, had that recurred during all those years? You said you had that early exposure with your mom being involved as a ceramist at home, and then did that carry through? It was always kind of top of mind?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. I think as an artist, people have asked me, "Why do you make art?" And it's a tough question. Basically, to create, I must create.
I was going to
Must
say
make.
because you have to.
Yeah, exactly. Because I have to. I mean, it's a drive inside.
Yeah.
So
No, that's a great answer to that question when asked. Um, in addition to your mother, was there any other outstanding artistic influence in your life all those years, and that kept your desire burning until you had the opportunity to?
well, so basically, my mom and my dad were both somewhat very creative and had hobbies of making things. My mom more so than my dad. My dad was, well, his engineering, him being an engineer, he was always creating and thinking very logically and
Putting things together and how they, yeah, okay.
exactly. So when he wasn't doing his engineering stuff, he was always doing some sort of hobby that had to do with either a craft or an art.
Oh, well, fun. Okay, so you really had that atmosphere at home. That's great. That nurtures
I would.
nurtures.
I was dissuaded from becoming an artist as a young kid. They said you'll starve, and golly, I've got to say I haven't starved yet.
Yeah. Okay. Good. 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 Um, and where did you train? I know it was here. Were you at Sac State or?
Sac State, American River College. I've been to many higher learning institutions. Central Missouri State University,
Oh, okay.
Chapman College,
Really?
the
That other one.
American River College, Sumner, Sac City College, Sac State. Yes,
So you got
quite a
around
few.
a lot of influences. And you got your master's from Sacramento State, though, right?
Precisely, yes.
Good program there. I know a little bit about the UC Davis program. I don't know much about Sacramento State.
I think any program that a person goes to really depends on how much of themselves they put into it.
Okay.
And I looked at it as my chance to do what I wanted to always do. So I cut loose and I put 200% in.
And you had the freedom
So
to
I
do that
thought it
too.
was a very good program.
Good. So they could accommodate your enthusiasm, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, not only accommodate it, but challenge it and to make me really push to grow.
That's all you can ask of any educational environment, right?
Yep.
It's a beautiful thing. And what's going on in your world right now as far as, are there any artists or of any type or ceramists that really inspire you or are kind of giving you ideas about things you'd like to try? I know it's so funny growing up in LA. I had no really sense of what goes on in Sacramento. I very seldom came up here, and people go to San Diego and San Francisco, but I never came to Sacramento. Now that I've lived here, just north of the city, it's really, there's just such a vibrant art and culture scene here, and so I know there are a lot of folks out there. I mean, anybody in the area or on a national level or international level that just really fires up your imagination?
Right now, currently, one of my mentors, Rodney Mott. He's got a place that he's set up his studio and his practice at in Penryn, California.
Okay.
I've watched him make stuff. He basically was the one that got me interested in throwing, using a wheel to create vessel forms. His mastery of that area of ceramics is just incredible. So,
and what defines that mastery? What makes someone just like, I mean, you can sit down and make a little something on a wheel, but I know there's levels of complexity. What does a master wheel person do?
Well, I watch him take a 25-pound bag of clay and turn it into a vessel with 3 pulls, which is pretty incredible.
Oh, okay. Efficient. There's efficiency. That's a component.
There's efficiency. There's skill. There's extreme proficiency. Yeah.
Is it like the thin wall? Is that suggestive of someone that's gone beyond?
Not necessarily a thin wall, although a thin wall can kind of say, well, golly, this person has a touch that they're able to take and turn this clay into something just really incredibly light, and probably more so than thin wall would be balance.
Okay.
If they're going to be thick walls, they need to be thick walls from bottom to top and all points in between. If they're going to be thin walls, bottom to top and all points in between.
So consistency on the body of the vessel.
Consistency, balance.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I love these nuances of these art forms and those kinds of things.
And that goes along the same route if it's a vessel form or if it's a sculpture form.
Okay, that's fair. We've talked about it, and I actually acquired one of your smaller amphora shapes, that classic kind of Greek amphora vessel that they, I guess, used to put things in and stack them in the ships and use them for transport.
Amphora used to be the containers of the ancient world.
Right.
They were 2 handles.
Yeah, that's right.
And they would allow storage of wine, olives, olive oil, fruits, foodstuffs, etc.
When they seal the opening,
they had a pointed bottom.
Yeah, right.
So they wouldn't stand up necessarily.
Not freestanding, right.
But you could stack them in the hull of a ship rather nicely. They'd go down to that keel and just sit right in there, and you could set 3 or 4 of them together, and then you could stack them on top of each other easily. And then unloading them, they would take them by the 2 handles and they would throw them off the ship and pierce them into the sand.
Oh, that was the reason. Okay, because like you said, you can't stand them upright on flat ground.
No.
Fascinating. You know, I remember them. Just, I guess, must have been reading all those National Geographics as a kid or something, and you know, reading about the Greeks and that pottery. And what did they seal the openings with? You know,
beeswax, I believe.
Was it wax
and some sort of cork or something, or they would have lids that could tie on to. So it'd be a layer of wax, then a lid, and then tied down.
Because the handles are right up there to the top. Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, fascinating. Anyway, we digress, but I've just always loved that shape and loved meeting a practitioner of the ancient art. Have you done any big ones?
I have. I've got some 3 or 4 foot ones, none with a sharp bottom though.
Okay. That'd be, yeah. How did they do that? Did they wheel throw them or hand build them or?
Yes.
Hand build?
Both.
Did they? Wow.
Yeah.
Never thought about that. Oh, we could spend a whole hour just.
Probably had to throw them upside down to get that pointed bottom.
Okay. Okay, we got to do a class on that someday. We may have to come up with a new grant project here.
There you go.
Creating vessels from the ancient world, you know? Oh, gee. Absolutely fantastic. So, you've worked with YubaSutterArts&Culture on a variety of projects. We talked about Thousand Bowls and that incredible project, but then you also got involved with our veteran art park project a few years ago, kind of stepping out of your normal ceramist role and I think working with Aaron Burks, another one of our favorite veteran professional artists. And this was a project we did, again, grant funded by the California Arts Council, where we were able to bring together some professional mural artists and work with veterans. In your case, you were kind of just serving as a veteran, telling part of your story of your time in service through the mural. This is an early kind of a sketch. In fact, it shows exactly what we wound up putting out there. It's on B Street, right across from Ellis Lake, near Highway 20, just the opposite end of the parking lot from the Quick Stop gas station there. And 7 murals, as depicted here, all of them about 4 feet by 8 feet. And they were each stories told about a veteran's time in service and assisted by a professional mural artist. So Aaron Burks helped us out with a lot of these, Leslie Greenitz. Who did you work with? Was it Aaron?
My veteran was Debbie Zanoni.
Oh, Zanoni, that's right. You worked with Debbie, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, over on the far right, I think. Was the one with the 22, the number 22 in it?
No, it's the one with the big eagle on it.
Oh, the eagle. Okay, sorry. It's been a few years. This is a kind of a panoramic photo of the park. If you haven't seen this, it's really worth a visit to see these 7 different murals. And then on the back of each one is a statement by the artist and something about the veteran that was involved with that project. And it's pretty powerful to see an artistic representation of time in the military service. We went as far back as the Korean War. The black and white kind of left of center was a gentleman who was a veteran of the Korean War. And then Marvin Bottom, just to the left of that, he was talking about his time serving in Vietnam, so as a Navy medic. Down front on the left is a mural that was created on a computer, but it shows other locations in Yuba Sutter of interest to veterans, monuments, memorials, and what have you. And then the far right down front is a mural designed by the graphics team at Beale Air Force Base. It's kind of an overview of Beale and the various commands out there and a little bit of the history. In fact, on the back, there are 2 panels that talk about the history of Beale, of course, initially as an Army base and then ultimately an Air Force base. So, and then a bench right in the middle that was custom designed for us by Valley Muffler when they were still in business. And you can sit and reflect, and it's kind of a real proud moment for us to have created that. We had a great dedication ceremony a few years back, and it's still there. Please go out and have that experience if you haven't already. So, Chris, thanks for being part of that.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. It challenged my comfort zone. Got me way outside my comfort zone. Of course, I am somewhat versed in the graphic arts and the drawing, if you will.
Yeah.
So it tasked every bit of that for me. So it was good.
No, great experience, and really appreciate you as a veteran and a professional artist being able to work that program with us. So you've had a number of gallery exhibits with us at Yuba Sutter Arts. I think most recently was at the Birds and Bowls, where you teamed up with Sue Grau, kind of our resident nature photographer, does fabulous photographs of bird life.
Incredible photographs.
And the way it worked out was so fun because you brought in bowls, and almost accidentally, I think, some of the color, the imagery in Sue's photographs kind of paralleled with some of the colors, the glazes in your bowls. So there were some neat pairings, like the one with a sparrowhawk, which is such a colorful bird, and one of your bowls kind of aligned with that color palette. So Somewhat
It
ex-
was fun. It was challenging putting the show together. It was challenging coming up with a way to pair them. Her and I spent about 8 hours putting the show together
no,
and hanging it.
just spectacular. And then the last couple of years where you've taught, gosh, 7 or 8 different series of our Ceramics for Veterans program, again, grant funded by the California Arts Council, allowed us to hire teaching artists. These are some of the flyers that we put together, and I designated each different session 3.0, 4.0, and I think we're up to 8.0 before we got shut down. But yeah, here are some examples of you and Michael Sirota working with veterans who signed up to be part of this free program that we offered to veterans as well as their families. So it was kind of neat. We had some husbands and wives and a couple of children get involved, and these are just some samples of the even the hand-built bowls that were created by veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Great You're a great instructor. Your approach to the whole community aspect of what the creative process brings is really something to behold. So,
well, Leo Tolstoy, War and Peace. He has a line in there that's fairly terse and short, but he says something to the fact that art is community.
And you're a living, breathing example of that. This is out in our patio, one of the early sessions. I think that was glazing day. You brought back the bisque-fired pieces that they had created, and then it was time to glaze.
Yep.
We still had our umbrellas up. The gentleman in the foreground, his name is Roger. He was he's the poster child for this program because he never forget. He came to us and it was really very, very moving. He was making a cup and saucer and plate that he planned to eat off of, and he'd been a cannoneer in the Marines, and he told us one day, he says, the Marines taught me how to blow stuff up, and you all taught me how to build things. So thank you for that. So Roger was an amazing student.
Absolutely. Yeah, he said that, and my heart just melted thinking about, gosh, what a better way to what a way to spend a life.
You can't
creating, teaching people how to create.
Absolutely. No, there he is again at work on one of his bowls. Yeah, he'd ride his bike in every day from Yuba City when we were doing the classes in Marysville. Then we did some in Yuba City as well. So look at that. Like you've been doing it all his life,
Yep.
We got to reach out. Oh gosh, what was her? She was a fantastic artist too. She and her husband were both military.
Yeah.
That was at the over at the Veterans Memorial Hall in that back workroom that they allowed us to use for some classes. That was a nice couple. They came down, I think, from Browns Valley for the classes. Got to meet some great people. And when you bring them all back after they've been fired and the students get to collect their work, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, to see their eyes just light up and sparkle when they see their work. It's really, really satisfying.
I think Abby's talked to you. We're trying to set up a ceramic studio at our studio complex in Yuba City. If the stars align, we may be able to offer some wheel throwing classes here sometime later this year. So we're working on funding. We've got a space that would probably work, at least for small groups. So once it's safe to do so, we really want to explore that further. And Chris, just before the shutdown, as you recall, we were just starting to talk about a program working with some of the homeless support groups, doing some ceramics classes as a therapeutic process, and we still have those relationships, and we're anxious to get that started again. Once it's safe to do so. So,
yeah, I even had a chance to do one of them.
That's right. You did get one in just before, yeah.
And the feedback that I got from the ones that did that was really positive and really good. They were excited. that they had a chance to go somewhere and actually do something creative, and that it I don't know if it's escapism or just gives them a chance to look at something positive as opposed to all the negativity in their life.
That's a great point. And, that whole therapeutic aspect, and it's so tactile, and getting your hands on the clay and then creating something, whether it's ornamentation, decorative, or functional. In Roger's case, he was all about function. And that's great either way. Just like your project at the state fair, when people just, do a quick hand build of something and whatever strikes their fancy. It's that therapy thing, it just makes you feel.
Yeah, I've enjoyed doing that. Generally, of course, we didn't get the fair this last year, but 5 or 6 previous fairs, I gone out and taken a big load of clay out. Usually, there's a local clay store here, Alpha Fired Arts, that generally gives me the clay for free as long as I tell people where I got it from.
Great.
And then I just give the clay out to people, and would have a booth at the fair and take little handfuls of clay and toss it to people and say, "Here, make something."
Do we have
something?
Do we have those images to show from the state fair? We had a couple of photos, I think, to give a sense of what that looks like at the end of the day. The amazing output from the general population that come by, they visit your booth and put up. We may have a delay in finding those images, though, but they'll pop up here in a minute, I'm sure. Shantae or Alex will, our technical crew will get them back up on the screen. We did hold, as we were starting to open up, we did hold an actual live event back in November for Veterans Day that you were part of. It was kind of a pop-up art gallery show. It wasn't a full gallery show. It was kind of temporary, and was only up for a few days, but you came up. Aaron Burks, our Army and Navy veteran friend, came up. We'll get back to that in a minute. But here's Chris's space at the California State Fair a couple of years ago, where that
was the first hour of the fair.
Oh, just an hour in. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh. And then at the end of the day,
and that table is about 8 foot long, and notice it kind of bowing a little bit in the middle.
I see that, yeah.
There's about 700 pounds of clay on there.
Oh my God. And then what? What happens next?
Some of them were cherry picked out of there, and I went ahead and fired them and just glazed them up, and they're just little geejaws.
Yeah.
That maybe sometime I'll figure out how to incorporate them into an art piece.
Okay. No, I love it. Again, community, right? Community involvement, everybody kind of hands-on. And
well, so if you look at that pile, that's kind of like mass consciousness right there.
Oh, wow.
If you think about it, I mean, it came out of the people's minds that had the clay. That was part of their consciousness. So
we need to get close-ups, and we need to analyze this, and it's got to be at least a master's thesis in there, right?
Yeah, at least, maybe.
I love that. What a great perspective. You always just hit it right on the head, Chris. That's exactly what that is. Well, so we did have our pop-up Veterans Art Gallery show this Veterans Day, and as I mentioned, Chris was there with some of his work. Aaron Burks talking about his current project, Sleeping Giants, portraits of survivors of Pearl Harbor that are still with us, that he's met with, and that he's sketching and painting. Brian Scholl was there. He's a local nature photographer. He's got a former SR-71 pilot and a bunch of other things, but he's a big bird photographer, has some spectacular work that he shared. And then Bert Johnson, who paints incredible oil paintings, Western landscapes, and Western scenes of various kinds, cavalry and cowboys and all kinds of great stuff. So we had a heck of an event on Veterans Day. So thanks for being part of that one too.
Absolutely. I felt rather honored to be in that with all those other fine artists.
It's got a great community here, and just really wonderful to bring everybody together. And then, of course, not long after that, we got shut down again. So we were kind of inching our way back toward opening, but soon. We kind of have planned our year for the first 6 months to be virtual like this. And in the second half, we're really hoping to bust loose and open up again. So if things continue to progress and we all get our vaccinations, if we're so inclined, and stay safe, we'll be open before we know it. Gosh, Chris, we could go on forever. Anything that we've missed that we ought to touch base on?
No, I mean, we could talk a little bit about the copper and clay.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't have a note, see, and I skipped right over it. Yes, we've got some fabulous imagery. Talk about, and I didn't know that you had done this work way back when as well as currently. So I'll let you take us through these images.
Absolutely. This was a small little rice bowl that went through the process of getting made, trimmed, bisque fired, glaze fired. And then it came up with a crack right in the side of it, about halfway down. And the thought was, well, shoot, the bowl's no good now. Either toss it out or do something else with it. So I kind of like pieces like this because it gives me the chance to explore new and different areas. And why not bring that crack into full view and let people think about that? And basically for me, it's what I've done with the copper and bringing the crack front and foremost, front and center, is to kind of celebrate our humanness. As a being, I'm not a perfect being, and I know that. I've got flaws here, there, and everywhere. But instead of hide them away, why not celebrate them? I mean, accept them for what they are. They're part of who I am, and they're part of my humanity. So that's kind of what I see the bowl as, allegorical kind of statement to speak about our imperfection as individuals.
No, I love that, kind of exploiting those imperfections as you just described them.
My whole idea on bringing the two together, the ceramics and the clay, those are the two mediums that I like to work with, metal and clay. You've not seen much of my metal work, but you've seen my metal and clay work together.
We'll do another show with the metalwork. I didn't realize. I didn't even know that about you.
Now, this was a cup that I'd made for a friend, and she absolutely loved it. It was a super light cup. She took it everywhere, and one day it was beside her seat in the driver's door. She opened up her door, and it fell out and broke into however many pieces are there, quite a few.
God. Wow.
And she was kind of crestfallen, kind of heartbroken that it busted up. And I said, don't worry, let's gather up the pieces and I'll put it back together for you.
Wow.
5 years later,
yeah,
it's back together.
Well, it's a slow.
It didn't happen overnight, but
it's a slow process. You've told me.
Sometimes. But
is it functional as a drinking vessel, or it's really more?
It's not. I left a very small piece out of the bottom on purpose.
Okay.
So yeah, no, it's all about art.
Spectacular. Oh, look at that.
There's another piece that I put together. I believe Abby owns that piece.
I believe it is. That's the one we have. Yeah.
It was one of the. It wasn't one of the 1,000 bowls, I don't believe, but it was one that was made shortly thereafter, and I had it. I don't view an art piece finished unless it's been done and actually bought and sold, or it's being used somewhere. So that's when I consider a piece done. when I'm no longer having to be the ward or the custodian of it.
Nice. Okay.
So I consider that a finished piece, but I also I view vessels like they can be artistic or they can be craft, and there's a very fine line in there, and I try not to talk about that too much because it can drive people absolutely over the edge.
I'm sure.
But I see that as art in and of because it's a one-off. It's a one of a kind. It'll never be redone. Yeah, let's look at the next one.
Wow.
The next one, I did a set of those, a set of 2, and I was one of the last things that I usually do to my pieces is I groom the bottom where they sit, and I want them to be able to sit on the finest granite countertop or Aunt Edna's baby grand piano without leaving scratches.
Right. I watched you do that where you're polishing the bottoms. And
so I was polishing the bottom on that, and it slipped and busted into all those pieces, and I was kind of frustrated, and I kind of scooped them up and set them aside. And I was about ready to throw them away, and I thought, no, let me put them back together.
Wow.
The thing was I couldn't find all the pieces. So if you look at the handle, there's a spot there in the handle that looks like it's copper.
Yeah.
And then you see those vertical lines going up the side of the piece. That I couldn't find that piece either.
So you're able to bridge the void with the copper.
I bridged it with the copper and kind of put little hints of what was there back in it to let people complete it with their own mind.
Wow.
I think art is good if you give the viewer something to do intellectually.
No, it's amazing. Is this an ancient concept, the idea of putting things back together? Or is it
or kintsugi? One means to repair with gold, and the other one is to repair with metal.
Okay.
Story goes that a Japanese shogun had ordered a big mess of porcelain from China, and 1 or 2 of his favorite pieces broke, and he sent them back to China to get repaired. And they sent them back, and it was one of the most ham-handed ways they could have repaired it that they did. And he was upset, and he was not happy, and he had his artisans come up with a different way to repair. And they came up with the Kitasori of Kintsugi, where they would put the pieces back together with lacquer. And while the lacquer was still wet, they would cover it with gold leaf, so actual 24-karat gold.
Wow.
And again, like what I talked about, bringing the humanity out in a piece. They celebrated the imperfection or the brokenness by putting it back together. When we mend something, there's always a little, I don't know, a shadow of what happened to it. There's a history that it wears of its repair.
There's a quote that's sometimes attributed to Hemingway, although there's some question about the authorship, that talks about, how we're all broken, but we're stronger at those broken places. So to your point. So,
well, most certainly, if a leg gets broken and it gets set and it's healed back up, the leg does become stronger than what it was.
Literally, yes. And then there's the figurative strength that comes from breakage.
And here, this little guy here, I've got the copper just boiling off the rim and the foot.
Is that controllable, or is it somewhat random?
It is controllable, but you got to really keep a good close eye on it. Yes.
I was going to say, Jay. Oh, beautiful work, Chris. Thank you for sharing that that part of what you're working on these days. And
Absolutely.
we have lots more to come, and great projects and programs to look forward to. So we're going to wrap up as we do every one of our shows. If you'll indulge me with answering a few questions that we borrowed from our friend James Lipton, who used to run the Actor Studio in New York City. This is from the questions he would ask his guests he interviewed on each program. So we'll start with what's your favorite word?
Wow.
A stumper.
It is. It's
You can pass.
I've got 1,000 words jumping out all at the same time.
Yeah. All right.
Let's just make it easy. Art.
Art.
I say art because that talks about our human experience. It talks about love. It talks about the entire realm of who we are as a society. So
absolutely. I think you're the first artist that's ever chosen that as their favorite word. So thank you. What's your least favorite word?
Hate.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Community.
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
I think I'd go back to the one I just said, hate.
That's all right. You have a favorite curse word you'd care to share?
Gee willikers.
Yeah, that's good. That's fine. That's safe. We've had them all, believe me.
Son of gun.
Our sponsors get on me after these shows when we go there, but no, just kidding. What sound or noise do you love?
The cooing of a young child.
It's a good one.
I think of when my daughter was young and she would just be happy and content and make these little noises.
Absolutely. What sound or noise do you dislike?
Yelling.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I don't believe I have one.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm doing it.
Perfect.
So,
what profession would you not like to pursue?
Well, so I always thought that I would like to be an engineer. I got my engineering degree. I got a job doing it, and boy, that was the worst 7 years of my life.
Really? Wow.
Had way more fun than I ever wanted to have.
Okay. Next chapter.
Yeah.
Well, good for you for making the change. And last, Chris, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Here's some clay. Get busy.
Oh, that's perfect. Chris Thompson, it's been a great pleasure. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new, and you give me another perspective on life and love and art and everything else. So,
thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to our technical support team, Abby Cecina, our producer, technical directors, Alex Cecina and Shante Arroyo. Until next time, that's it for Artist Alchemy. Don't forget to tune in 2 weeks from today, when my guest will be Ron Yoshimura. He's the executive committee member of the Marysville Japanese American Citizens League, with whom we've been collaborating, Ron and his team, on the creation of the Arboga Assembly Center, Memorial Site, and Interpretive Center. This is definitely an example of art meets history meets culture. So tune in right here on YubaSutterArts' Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. for another great conversation. Thanks so much, and see you then.
Awesome.